Man, is it cold on the mountaintop. The Ohio State is national champions. We've ascended the mountain. We've climbed the ranks. We are number one. Crown us. This is another episode of the World Famous Pod. I'm your host, Mason, and we're just talking Bucks. This is going to be a coronation of types for the Ohio State national champion Buckeyes. The national champions. God, that has a good ring to it. Man, you pinch yourself, you wake up, not a dream. We're raising the trophy, proved everybody wrong, got the W, got the job done. This win, the 34-23 win over Notre Dame last Monday, a couple days ago. Again, it's hard not to reflect back on the journey that this team took, not just this season, but since this class got here. And the main thing I want to talk about today is to kind of tell that story from my vantage point. There was a big thing that Ryan Day talked about in a lot of his pressers was the story. Going through the college playoff was the story's not written, or the story's still being written. If you win out and you win the national championship, you get to tell your story. And I'm sure in due time, we'll hear more from each of the players as they do their interviews and they go off to do bigger things and in the NFL. But we'll get that from them. But just from an outsider's perspective, not an actual member of the team, just an honorary, in my own mind, member of the team. This is the story that I saw play out, and you can reflect that I reflect back on with this team. And it's kind of a hero's journey of sorts, where the Ohio State, the Buckeye football team itself is the hero, obviously, in this metaphor. But it's a great representation of kind of the ups and downs of life, and a team that comes together and overcomes a lot of those ups and downs. And with every hero's journey, you have to start with the potential. So coming into the 2021 season, Ohio State had just rattled off its 8th consecutive victory against Michigan. So a stranglehold on the rivalry. They had made the college football playoff the first 2 seasons of Ryan Day's tenure at Ohio State, making it to the national championship in his second season, getting beat by Alabama. So the future was pretty bright, especially they had just brought in the number 2 recruiting class in America. The future was bright for this team. There were a lot of expectations. There were thoughts that this team was going to go on, obviously, to continue winning in the rivalry game, to continue making the college football playoff, and eventually getting it minimum was 1 national championship. And after we get into the 2021 season, we move out of the potential phase, and we kind of the story, and we move kind of into some more of the heartbreak and failure that happened to this team that they had suffered. Just going down the list, the first one, getting upset by the team up north in 2021. They ended up missing the college football playoff that year. They ended up playing in the Rose Bowl, beating Utah in a shootout. That was the Jackson Smith-Njigba game, where he made all his money that he didn't even have to play the next season to still get drafted in the first round. The next season, 2022, again, another home loss. I think they lost earlier on in the season to, that might have been 2021, where they lost to Oregon early season. But anyway, 2022, they lose at home again to that team up north. They still end up making the college football playoff, but at the stroke of midnight, they lose to Georgia in the Peach Bowl, which the winner of that game was going to end up playing TCU in the national championship, and would have been, Georgia ended up winning like 60-7 or something like that. Ohio State probably would have done something similar. It's again, it's easy to look back on the what could have beens, but that kind of adds a little extra sting to that season. 2023 comes around. This is the Kyle Honda McCord season. They lose yet again to that team up north, missing out on the Big Ten championship game. They miss out on the college football playoff. And all these seniors that had come into this highly touted recruiting class of 2021, now we're kind of at a crossroads. What do we do? Do we come back or do we go to the league? Marvin Harrison famously, he went to the league. No hard feelings from any of the guys here at Ohio State, I would imagine, to someone doing that. Do we go to the league? Do we pursue our dreams, what we've worked so hard for, or do we put that on hold? Do we come back and we try to do this thing the right way? And a large number of those seniors did, in fact, decide to come back. I think Jack Sawyer revealed through an op-ed article that he wrote. I believe it was for the Lantern, the Ohio State student newspaper, where he talked about all the seniors getting into a group chat after the Cotton Bowl loss to Missouri and hashing out everybody's situation, hashing out where everybody's head was at, figuring out what the plan was going to be, and eventually getting most of the senior class on board to come back and give this thing one more shot. So we're still working through the 2024 season. There's a lot of potential with this team in general, just with all they got through the portal, as well as the returning class. With the incoming, with bringing in Chip Kelly to run the offense, there was a lot of expectations. It's a mini hero's journey inside the greater one, if you want to look at it that way. So, we get into the season. We have that first midseason loss to Oregon, and then upset at home again by that team up north. And, at that point, people were calling for Ryan Day's job. People were, I guess, I don't know how true this is or not, but we'll just preface it by saying allegedly this happened. Ryan Day and his wife had to pull their kids out of school for a little while because of the way that teachers were talking to them about their dad, which is no way to handle yourself, especially when you're talking to kids. But as a fan in general, you probably should just not do that. So there's a lot that was kind of going on with this team. I want to take a look at, or bring up kind of Will Howard's background to bring him into the story a little bit. Again, he transferred in here from Kansas State. But before that, going back to, I think this is his 5th year. So 2020, he was a 3-star recruit from Pennsylvania. He wasn't even recruited to Penn State, or OSU for that matter. But he wasn't, a must-have recruit. He wasn't this guy that was going to lead you to a national championship. Spoiler alert, he does. But, he wasn't a bad football player, just not the guy. So he ends up going to Kansas State, and for 4 years there, he loses the quarterback battle, and ends up having to come in. The quarterbacks are getting hurt each of those years, and he has to come in and basically bail the team out. And eventually, his senior year there, he earned the Big 12 Player of the Year honors, which is kind of a big deal for a kid who wasn't that heavily recruited out of Pennsylvania, and he wasn't that sought after. And he ends up transferring to Ohio State, and he's going through this roller coaster of a season. And no one even thinks he's going to be the guy to lead us to a national championship, even after we get into the college football playoff, and even after he has 2 great performances in the first 2 rounds. Still, people are not confident that he's the guy, which is bananas. But anyway, so we get back into the story. So Ohio State just loses to Michigan. People are calling for Ryan Day's job. People are calling for all the other, several other coaching staff members member's job, including myself, talking about Josh Fry, Justin, who's the Ohio State head coach or offensive line coach. I get this wrong all the time. Justin Fry. I get him and Josh Fryer mixed up, the right tackle for Ohio State. So Justin Fry, I called for his job. I said we had guys transferring, we had guys getting hurt, guys didn't seem like they were developed, and all season long I didn't think that he was the guy, and I got proved wrong this year. So shout out specifically to Justin Fry for doing such a great job with the offensive line. So after that loss, apparently there's this team meeting where they bring some of the coaches in as well, including Coach Day, and things just get hashed out. It's, for lack of a better term, it's adult conversation. It's family conversation. It's hard conversations. Guys are talking about how they feel like things are mismanaged. This is all allegedly. So guys are talking about how things are mismanaged, how plays should have been called, how this should have been run, how that should have been done. And there's actually accountability that's taken by Ryan Day and his coaching staff, and probably by some of the players as well, for not feeling like or doing the things that they feel like they should have lived up to. So, we had that conversation happen. Ohio State draws the 8 seed, and it ends up being honestly the worst draw. It's the toughest road to the national championship that any team could have drawn, aside from Tennessee, who is also in the same boat. Probably just a little bit worse because they had to go on the road in the first round versus Ohio State getting the home draw. But that's neither here nor there. And again, Ohio State, the players are at a crossroads here. Another one for this senior team, and for the team in general. What do we do? Do we lick our wounds and feel sorry for ourselves after the 4th straight loss to our rival in a game that we shouldn't have lost, which would just give everybody what they want? They would just want Ohio State to roll over, and just, it gives people something to talk about. The hype that was never lived up to yet again for this senior squad. Or do we go out there, do we play our nuts off, and do we bring a national championship back to Columbus? And it started with, in the first round, 42-17 butt kicking, ass whooping of the 7th ranked Tennessee. And then we move on to the quarterfinal round, where we have to go to the West Coast, to the Rose Bowl, to face the number 1 ranked undefeated Oregon Ducks, who beat us earlier in the season. 41-21, belt to ass. Beat the crap out of this team. Moving on into the college football semifinal game. 2 wins in convincing fashion. Now we got to play Texas in Dallas. Basically another road game. This one's to get to the college football playoff, or get to the national championship. What do? 28-14. Never really out of the driver's seat. That was the famous scoop and score with Jack Sawyer to seal the game at the end there, etching himself into, especially with what comes next, into Buckeye lore forever. Get through them. We've won 3 straight games against top 10 ranked opponents. 7th ranked Tennessee, 1 ranked Oregon, and 3 ranked Texas. End up having to play number 5th ranked Notre Dame in the national championship game. They ended up winning, again, never really out of the driver's seat, 34-23 in very convincing fashion, with the exception of, I think, Notre Dame sneaking some points in there, making the game a little bit more interesting than it probably should have been. But that's what happens when you jump out to a 31-7 lead and you feel like you're just invincible. So we'll have to kind of let them slide there. But Ohio State goes on this miracle run of beating 4 top 10 ranked teams and 3 of the top 5 ranked teams in a month span to win the national championship. The most unprecedented run that's ever happened in the college football national championship history. No national champion has ever had to do this. No national champion has run the gauntlet that Ohio State has run. Ryan Day immediately catapulted into OSU coaching greatness. He's up there. He's not quite with um, with Coach Woody Hayes. Geez, that was a brain fart. He's not up there with Coach Woody Hayes, who has 5 or 6 national championships. I can't remember which one. Well, we'll just name them. So Woody Hayes, we have Paul Brown, who's got one, Jim Tressel, who's got one, Urban Meyer, who's got one, and now Ryan Day, who's got one. So 5 would make Woody Hayes. Gives us 9 total. He's out. He's up there. He's got more national championships than Bo Schembechler has. The probably most famous coach at that team up north, which is awesome. Will Howard finishes the season with over 4,000 passing yards. He breaks into the top 3 in Ohio State history for passing yards in a season, behind only C.J. Stroud and Dwayne Haskins, 2 other prolific passers for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He broke the single season pass percentage record it was 71.9% held by C.J. Stroud, and now it's 73 held by Will Howard. The guy that no one thought was going to be the guy. You had this team that truly exemplifies the brotherhood, and that's something that gets preached around Ohio State, the Ohio State locker room, and it started under the Urban Meyer era. I might be wrong on that, but that's when my memory of it first kicked on, and it's moved through this Ryan Day era. And I feel like there were times over the last few seasons where it kind of lost its luster, where it was just something that guys said and they didn't really mean. And the brotherhood is that you go out and you play for your brother, for your family. And again, this team, especially the seniors, came out and they exemplify what that means. Again, the selflessness of them to come back and put their dreams on hold, to come back and give this thing one more try, and ultimately deliver a national championship to Columbus. Guys like the leader of the seniors, for the most part, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Cody Simon, Lathan Ransom, Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock. You have obviously Will Howard, Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson, guys like Seth McLaughlin, who transferred in, who was a senior, went into his senior year from Alabama to come here. Won the Remington Award for best center, but he ended up getting hurt and still coaching on the sidelines, getting his guys right for this run that they had to do, because he's got a little bit of experience in the college football playoff realm. Again, bouncing back to Henderson, he's a 4-year starter at Ohio State. Prolific freshman. He broke Archie Griffin's single game rushing record his freshman year. He also ran for over 1,200 yards and 15 scores. He's okay with a guy like Quinshon Judkins, another 1,000+ yard rusher, transferring in and splitting carries in the backfield. And oh, by the way, at the end of the playoff, they both end up rushing for over 1,000 yards. You have Devin Brown, who sat behind Kyle McCord all last year, for McCord to then transfer out, and Devin Brown is to come in and try to start in the Cotton Bowl, where he gets hurt after 18 snaps. And then instead of, he knows that coming back this season, Ohio State was going to try to bring in a transfer quarterback, ended up being Will Howard, and he's going to have to compete again for the starting spot. And he's at a disadvantage because they're not going to bring in somebody to sit him. Goes through the whole season again as the backup. Gets his time in a few times. He came in through a pass where in the Michigan State game where Jeremiah Smith caught it one-handed, which was pretty sweet. My wife and I were there, and it happened right in front of us, which is an awesome memory for me to have. But Devin Brown comes in, sits again behind the starting quarterback. We get to the college football playoff, and there's a transfer portal window, an opportunity for him to go somewhere else next season, because he knows he's probably not going to be, he's at least going to be in another QB battle again for somebody who has a little bit more time at Ohio State, who probably has the upper hand because they want to try to develop somebody for the long haul who's equal in skill He's got this opportunity to transfer and decides that he's not going to do that, and he's going to stick it out just in the off chance that they need him to come and be the backup in case Will Howard goes down. Now he got a national championship out of it, and it ends up being a great decision for everybody. He just found out he transferred to play quarterback at Cal. So obviously we want nothing but the best for Devin Brown because he's been a Buckeye through and through. Moving into another guy, Lathan Ransom. No one talked about this guy all year because of Caleb Downs, the guy that transferred in from Alabama, who was, this is no knock on Caleb Downs. He's obviously a stud, but so is Lathan Ransom, and he was just not at Caleb Downs' shadow, but he was overcast, and he made some huge plays. He was like one of our number one run stoppers from the safety position. This is a kid who I believe it was his freshman year. It was the Rose Bowl game in 20. So yeah, it was his freshman year. He ends up breaking his leg in that game, and he's marred by injuries all throughout his career, and he gets his redemption through this whole story as well. Again, without being talked about, but he's not, the kid is not going to make a stink about it because that's just the kind of kid he is. He's just going to go out and play hard, and game recognizes game. Scouts are going to see that anyway. Kudos to him. Moving down the list again, we have Emeka Egbuka. There's countless examples of these. I'm naming a few of them, but he ends up being at the end of the season after the college football playoff number one all time at Ohio State in total receptions, while never being the number one. It was if it wasn't Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, then it was Marvin Harrison, and then if it wasn't Marvin Harrison, it was Jeremiah Smith this year. The freshman phenom, and anybody who, especially someone who's 22 years old, it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility for them to get, especially for them being as good as Emeka Egbuka is, to get all butthurt about a freshman coming in and starting over him. But he didn't do that. He took the role that was given to him, and had a great game against Texas, and ended up again he's number one all time in receptions at Ohio State. Moving down the list, continuing down the list, you have Donovan Jackson. I've talked about Donovan Jackson, I think every single podcast, because this kid is amazing. Again, he's coming into the season. He's expected to probably be an All-American guard, and your left tackle gets hurt, and moving from a less athletic position to a more athletic position, especially on the offensive line, is something that when teams have to do it, it's kind of like, well, fuck, we're fucked. There's nothing that we can do. This kid against elite teams all year long, especially in the playoff, was amazing. He steps in halfway through, learns how to play the position, and then against the elite pass rush of Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and the pretty decent pass rush from Notre Dame, he had one pressure in the 4 games. This is during the college football playoff when everybody's got a magnifying glass on every player for every game. One pressure on Will Howard's blind side, no sacks, no tackles for a loss. Elite. Made himself so much money going into the draft. Again, I could go on and on and on about these guys, about the seniors, about the selflessness of this team, and the ups and the downs that this team faced and overcame ultimately in the crowning of the national champion, winning the national championship. This team is definitely, for me, up there it's up there for the my favorite Ohio State team that I've ever watched. Again, purely from the story standpoint. Again, we've, as individuals, we've all been through the you have your potential of what you could be, and then you get into what you're chasing that potential, and you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail. And like there's times where, it would be understandable for you to give up, or for you to move on and try something else, or and for this for you to remove yourself from the situation. It completely understandable. There's times where that would be understandable, and except you don't take that route, because that might be the easy route, or it might not be the route that you see for yourself, or you've envisioned for yourself, or you've invested so much time into this thing that like you have to make it work. Like there's no going back. You just have to make it work. And that's what this senior team represents, is that they had all the turmoil and doubt and disappointment from themselves, and probably coaches, and obviously Buckeye Nation has been disappointed in years and years, over these last few seasons. And for them to come back the way that they came back, and for them to do what they did by going on that run, even after the ups and downs of just this season, is something to be admired, and it's something to be celebrated. And no one can ever take that away from this group of guys. They are immortalized in college football. They're immortalized in Ohio State history. They're immortalized in Big Ten history, college football playoff. Like, I don't care what anybody says about this team. I don't care what anybody says about how the season went versus how they arguments for why or why not, they should or shouldn't be the national champion. This team did what other teams they did what everybody else couldn't do, and it's never happened before in college football in national championship history. They went on the run that they went on, and they it was just amazing. I can't even put any more words to it other than it was amazing, to witness and to celebrate and to feel like I was a part of in some small way. Even though they don't know me from Adam, but maybe in a few years they will. Who knows? But again, this is the coronation episode, the crowning of Ohio State as the national champions. I couldn't be more happy. I couldn't be prouder for this group of guys. Again, I'm sure this won't make it to them, but if it does, so proud of you. Buckeye for life. As always, go Bucks.